in America with Tom Basile on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
And welcome back to Sunday in America. I'm Tom Basile. Tim Schmidt started his first successful business in 1997. Schmidt Engineering provided mechanical engineering services to a wide array of companies. But in 2003, he founded Delta Defense and the United States Concealed Carry Association and began publishing a self-defense magazine that focused on responsible firearms ownership. The magazine has grown into a national association providing education, training, and self-defense insurance to its members. Today, the USCCA has more than 250,000 members and 1.8 million newsletter subscribers. Delta Defense employs 170 people in 12 states and was named to the Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest-growing private companies every year since 2012. Tim has appeared in hundreds of articles and on hundreds of news outlets and is a key driver of the national conversation about responsible gun ownership and reform. Welcome to Sunday in America. Tim Schmidt, president of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association.
Well, good morning, Tom. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show today. Thanks a lot.
Oh, well, thank you for making time on your Sunday. You have taken an approach to this debate that I think is so important because one of the things that I'm trying to encourage people when they talk about this is to be outcomes based. What are we looking to do? All right, in the wake of Parkland, what are we looking to do? We're looking to make schools safer. How do you actually get there in a practical sense? And I think that what the USCCA and some of the things that you're talking about are really that outcomes-based discussion, which is a far more sober discussion and effective discussion to have than the stuff that we're seeing on the mainstream and the mainstream press. So I want to talk about those issues, but first, talk to us about the Concealed Carry Association. This organization basically has grown from one guy, you having this inspiration to a national movement. Talk to us about that and how it's grown over the years.
Well, Tom, it's one of those things that when I started it, it was certainly not easy going. There's a lot, as you can imagine, just all sorts of challenges. But it didn't take me too long to realize that this is what God put me here on this earth to do, and it's really turned into a mission to help people down the path of responsible gun ownership. Doesn't matter if they're at 0 miles per hour, if they're literally just beginning. Mm-hmm. We've got a program for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. We can put you in a situation where you feel confident with a gun, where you know what you're doing. So ultimately, you can be that first responder, that first line of defense for your family and loved ones.
Tim, in the wake of Parkland, and this happens every time there's a mass shooting, it could be a school shooting or something else, literally hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation are proposed to curb gun ownership all across the country. And your view is fewer guns is not the solution, but how we approach and talk about gun ownership and where guns can be is. So let's talk about open concealed carry and arming teachers and make your case for us.
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is you're right. As soon as some horrible tragedy happens, all of these, whether they're folks in the media or they're legislators, and I'm not sure what percentage of them have actually good intentions, but ultimately all these different laws that they propose, this is purely 100% ineffective feel-good legislation that will have absolutely no effect on what a criminal or a psychopath is going to do with a gun. All it does is it makes it harder, more difficult for good guys like you and me to get guns. And this notion that making it more difficult for good guys to get guns is going to somehow make us safer, it is not only inaccurate, but it's doing a huge disservice to people who apparently don't think things through very well. And so back to your point before, Tom, you made a great point. I love what you said about, hey, let's focus on outcomes, right? Because that's really all that matters. And this whole concept of arming teachers this would work. And the neat thing is that you don't have to arm all the teachers, because trust me, I understand that there are plenty of teachers that don't want to even touch a gun, right? And I understand that there's lots of people like that, but there are plenty of teachers who are willing to stand up, willing to get training, willing to do what it takes to be that front line of defense for their students.
Because they care about their students. I mean, I think that's one of the things, and we are speaking with Tim Schmidt, the president and founder of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association here on Sunday in America. This has been the minute that this idea, which is not a new idea, but the idea that teachers, some percentage, of trained teachers who voluntarily want to do this got blown out of proportion instantly to, well, you're going to have guns in every classroom.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. And the best part about this whole situation or this plan is that you really don't need to add that many guns into a school to create that powerful deterrent effect. Mm-hmm. The only reason these psychopaths and these criminals attack schools is because schools literally go out of their way to put up these ridiculous signs that say, no weapons allowed, And of course, the only people that follow those rules, those signs, are the good guys like you and I. And really what it does, it makes a perfect target for these crazy people. So, Sure, all we have to do is we have to make it known that, hey, guess what, Mr. Criminal, guess what, Mr. Psychopath? Now, if you're going to go into that school, there's a good chance that someone's going to shoot you before you have a chance to do anything bad, and they're going to go somewhere else.
And let's be clear. And I've talked about this. It's an uncomfortable thing to say. But if somebody is willing to die for their cause, whatever it happens to be, for what they want to do, it's going to be very difficult to stop these things from happening. But this is about reducing the number of these instances by creating an active deterrent mechanism, and that's what concealed carry is for teachers.
That's exactly correct, Tom. And I mean, if you think about how many times are there attacks of this sort on police stations or on gun shows? Of course, there's never any, because these guys, they know that there's going to be a massive defense, and so that's why they don't go.
We're speaking with Tim Schmidt, the president and founder of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. So, Tim, I don't know if you've done any research on this, but if there was a national program like this, what percentage of teachers do you think, based on a variety of data, that would actually participate in a program like this?
Yep, that's a great question, and that's important analysis to look at. So I would like to make the correlation to your typical percentage of population that gets a concealed carry permit, which in any given state is roughly between 2 and 4%. That's how many people that are eligible to get a concealed carry permit will get one. And every single state that's passed may or shall issue concealed carry legislation has seen massive drops in crime because of what I referred to before, that deterrent effect. Mm-hmm. So it's my contention that I don't think it's out of line to think that 2 to 4% of teachers, administrators, coaches within any given school system would be willing to go down this path and become that responsibly armed citizen. And that would be enough. That would be enough of a deterrent effect for this to have powerful results. And I don't think that's out of line. So 2 to 4%. So if you have 100 teachers, we're talking about 3 or 4 teachers.
The other thing that is that I know that you've been talking about, in addition to those 2 to 4, putting concealed weapons, allowing to those 2 to 4% to have concealed weapons, and clearly you're against gun-free school zones. What about concealed carry reciprocity is something that it seems to enjoy some pretty wide support because it is so common sense. And I know you've been advocating that. Do you think that we'll see progress on that as a result of this new, this national discussion that we're having now?
Boy, I tell you what, I was really having high hopes for national concealed carry reciprocity until Trump started talking about it a few days ago, saying that he doesn't think it's going to pass.
Yeah. No, why did he say that? What's your analysis? Is it just because he thinks that it overcomplicates another piece of legislation, or is he genuinely opposed to reciprocity?
I can't believe that he truly is genuinely opposed to reciprocity, because I literally stood in the crowd and watched him on stage at the NRA annual convention saying that that I will support the Second Amendment. I'm not going to let you down. I mean, he said those words, "I'm not going to let you down." I mean, come on, if he pulls this off, this is definitely going to be letting Second Amendment folks down.
I think Tim, I think back to the Steve Scalise shooting a number of months ago. And we had a coordinated assassination attempt on dozens of Republican legislators, political assassination attempt. And if Scalise's detail was not there, people would have been mowed down by this psychopath. So do you get a sense, putting the president aside, do you get a sense that there is momentum for this in the Congress?
I think so. I think there's massive momentum. I think ultimately congressmen have to understand, at least the senators, because it's already through the House of Representatives. The senators have to understand that they have to eventually, reply or stand up to their constituents, and they know that their constituents want this. The only people who don't want national concealed carry reciprocity are the police, the chiefs of police, who typically are elected officials. If you talk to your average beat cop, they love this idea. They love the idea of having more responsibly armed people to watch their back as well. So I think it's going to get momentum.
That's good to hear. Now, I want to just touch on open carry laws. Now, obviously, this is not necessarily your bailiwick, but we have people who listen to this program from across the country. There are people who lobby for an increase in open carry states. To increase the number of open carry states or open carry capability. That's not something that you focus on. And can you talk to us why concealed carry is really the way to go as opposed to open carry?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I tell you every time I open my mouth about this, it's kind of like discussing 9mm versus .45 auto. You always get yourself in trouble with somebody. But here's the deal. I mean, open carry, I'll tell you what, I can't really think of too many tactical reasons why you'd ever want to do that, especially if you're in any sort of a big city. All you're going to do is scare the crap out of half the people, and you're going to lose the tactical advantage of the perps, the bad guys, not knowing that you're armed. So I mean, look, I understand, hey, if you're a rancher out in Montana, if you're living out in the sticks and you're riding your horse, then sure, man, open carry. I mean, when I'm up north in my property, some hunting property, I open carry because it's more comfortable. But, man, I would never do it, even walking around in my town here in West Bend.
And that tactical advantage is what you're talking about. And again, I think it's a very common sense argument. And talk to us a little bit more, if you could, about what USCCA is doing to train people. We talked on this program a lot about how the far left in this country stigmatizes gun owners at every opportunity. And they make law-abiding citizens out to be the problem, not the criminals. They make legal weapons out to be the problem, not the illegal weapons. And what you're doing to train people, so that people will be more responsible. They will respect not only guns, but gun owners and the concept of gun ownership. Talk to us a little bit more about that sort of national effort.
Sure. Well, I mean, that really kind of plays right into the mission of the USCCA, which is to introduce responsible gun ownership to 10 million Americans. And in the process of doing that, we will be able to educate, train, and ensure and protect 1 million Americans. And if you look at the FBI crime stats, by adding 1 million responsibly armed Americans in our country, we will stop 20,000 crimes and ultimately save 1,000 people's lives. Now, we're well on the way to achieving that, and it's really kind of a rallying cry here at the USCCA. But you're right. The left, they do. The anti-gun folks, they do demonize responsible gun owners, and it's just the opposite. So the gun actually does much more good than it does bad. Now, when I say that, people using guns do good with them much more often than they do bad. 2017, New York Times reported their own stat: roughly 13,000 people were killed with guns. In terms of a crime was committed, a bad guy had a gun and they killed someone. 13,000 in 2017. In that same year, over 116,000 crimes murders, rapes, assaults were stopped with guns. We're talking that's over a 10-to-1 difference, but nonetheless, the anti-gun folks still will claim that it's the gun that's the evil. That's not true at all.
Tim, and we are speaking with Tim Schmidt, the president and founder of the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. Tim, the castle doctrine and self-defense is also something that comes up all the time. There are a number of states that have the castle doctrine. There are a number of states that don't. Can you kind of give us a sense of where we are in that? I mean, and for those of you who don't know this, in a number of states around the country, and you probably know the number better than I do. You can be prosecuted and sued civilly for defending your home, your family, your property with a firearm, if somebody breaks into your home. And there is also a national effort, a common sense effort to try and change those laws. Is there any movement on that in those states?
Well, I'll tell you this, Tom. Those sorts of laws, the castle doctrine, sometimes referred to as the standard ground laws, I mean, they're different in every single state. Just like the concealed carry laws, they're different in every single state, and they're constantly evolving. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand, though, is that even if you're in a state like, everyone realizes that Texas and Florida, quite frankly, have great laws in that vein. People can still sue you. Just because the castle doctrine law is there, you can still get sued. You still have to defend yourself. I mean, that law will help your defense, but you can still get sued. And that's why one of the main things that USCCA members really appreciate is that we're essentially the largest self-defense firearms liability insurance provider in the country. And that's what we do. We make sure that when our customers, when our members are essentially backed into a corner by our legal system, that we come to their aid with the best attorneys, the best pro-Second Amendment lawyers, and deep pockets to make sure that they don't wind up in jail.
One last question for you. What can people do? There is, after every one of these mass shootings, Tim, there's always, we see how these young people, I think, are used as political props, and they're put on these buses, and they're sent to capitals, and they're thrown up on TV. And these are people who are hurting. I understand that they feel helpless and they want to do something. I think a lot of us feel that way, Tim. But let's be, again, this is about outcomes. Let's be productive about it. And what can people who support arming teachers, who support concealed carry reciprocity, and support, limiting gun-free zones, what can they do? What should they be doing in their states, in their local communities right now to help advance those?
I think the smartest thing that can be done, especially at the low level, the low grassroots level, is to talk about the real solution, the outcome-based solutions, in a non-emotional manner. I mean, look, you have to understand that a lot of people who, especially if they're in a situation where they've experienced this sort of a tragedy, that's a huge emotional blow, and they're having knee-jerk reactions, and they think that this feel-good legislation is actually going to do something. So instead of saying, "Hey, you're an idiot, you're stupid," no, don't do that. Embrace them where they're at and say, "You know what? I understand you may think this is going to work, but look at this solution. What if there were actually 5 teachers in that school?" And talk through, use logic as much as you can, and try to get away from the emotional connection, because if you stick with the emotion, it's going to be a failure.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's important for everybody, and particularly the gun owners in this country who have been routinely browbeaten and scapegoated and demonized by the leftists, to play a constructive, sober role in trying to create better outcomes in these situations. Tim Schmidt, U.S. Concealed Carry Association. Learn more about what the USCCA does at usconcealedcarry.com.